Welcome back to the Mountain Morning Show. So happy to have you here with us as we talk about so many of the great films in Sundance. And perhaps you've taken a moment when you were signing up for something online to see that little terms and conditions box and just check it. Well, I got a guy with me who's going to tell you why you shouldn't have just checked it. Maybe you should have read it. Colin Holbach of Terms and Conditions. So happy to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me. So yeah, I mean, every day we sign and agree to hundreds of these things.
Right.
And like yourself, I've never read any of them before. So that was one of the things that got me really wondering. You know, I plugged in my phone one night and that familiar terms and conditions box showed up. And I thought for a second, hey, maybe what's changed in technology in the last 10 years isn't the technology so much as what's behind the technology, the legalese. Right. So like if you think of Hulu, for instance, what makes Hulu different than television? It comes with the terms and conditions agreement.
Right.
A Kindle, same thing, different than a book, terms and conditions agreement.
Yeah.
So
it's not passive anymore. There's something going on.
Yeah. So I mean, so much of our lives now are sort of monitored and controlled by these agreements. That they're just tied to us and tied to much of what we do. So like in the future, for instance, like 5 years from now, your toilet might be synced up to the internet so they can check to see if it gets clogged, but they'll also be able to know your bowel movements. So.
Wow. It could get kind of scary. Mm-hmm. I don't want anybody knowing about my bathroom habits.
I think that's probably where where drawing the line makes some sense.
Yeah,
so.
This is that's TMI to the extreme right there.
Well, yeah, let me ask you, like, if somebody was to come up to you and say, hey, would you rather have all of your search history exposed to all of your friends and family, or lose your pinky finger? Which would you choose?
I'd take my pinky finger.
Pinky finger, yeah.
Yeah, it'd be pretty easy. Isn't that crazy that we're at that point? So. We're going to show your clip in a moment, but I want to ask you a kind of a scary question. I've got some techno geeks I hang out with.
Right.
You know, well, I shouldn't say hang out with. They have a different language and everything. I barely understand them. But when I've spent time with them, I noticed they had all their, they always had a sticky note covering the camera of whatever device they were on. And I said, why is that? I said, because of the terms and conditions on a couple of the things we've signed allow use of our camera without us knowing it. Have you heard of this?
You know, I have heard of it. I know that there are also things built into iPhones that can trigger audio recording and voice recording without your knowledge. That said, there's not really much of a granting in terms and conditions that really allows for that. So if it's happening, it's done without our knowledge.
Wow.
So.
All right. Well, let's take a look at the clip, and then we'll talk some more in just a moment here. Here it is, terms and conditions.
The reason why it's so important is a lot of people will say, well, I have nothing to hide, so why does it matter? But the reality is if you care about the ability for whistleblowing to exist, if you care about freedom of expression, if you care about any of these things, you care about these terms and conditions because they grant unbelievable access to our data to both corporations and governments. Right. And that's really an important thing to understand because the corporate relationship to the government, when they both have something massive to gain, corporations have a ton to gain from buying, selling, and trading our data. And the government wants to retain as much of this information under the auspices of preventing terrorism, things like that.
It's always under that.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. So as long as their interests are aligned, it's really going to be hard to see any kind of sort of regulatory shift. So I think it really requires that the individual, citizens understand how their privacy is being just invaded and demand some change. So
when can people see this?
The film?
Excuse me, yes.
Well, obviously it premieres here on Tuesday at 5:20 p.m. at Slamdance, and then it'll be again the next morning at 11:30 a.m. And then hopefully it will find its way into the world from here.
If someone were to take one thing from you with regard to this, what would you tell them? What's the most important thing that they should gain from seeing this movie?
The most important thing, I think, is just the primary awareness that pretty much everything you do in the digital medium is going to be recorded, has the potential to be recorded, and is not private. So I think that when you communicate in the digital form, you just have to really be conscious of, you have to think, well, when I send this email, I need to know that it's not like writing in a private journal I keep under my bed. It's saved, it's stored, and it can be shared. So
lastly, what do you do personally when you're like deciding what what you're willing to sign off your life on?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. either you get to have these services or you don't.
Right.
So we're really kind of held hostage in a way. And people can say, well, you can get off Facebook. And some of us can get off Facebook. But for a kid growing up right now, it can be kind of social suicide. So you have to remember there's a lot of concerns that come with something like that. So at this point in time for me, I mean, I'm as careful as I possibly can be.
Yeah.
But the reality is that these systems are here to stay. So
Yeah.
what we need to see is a shift on the back end so that our privacy and our constitutional rights are actually enforced in the digital space.
Okay. Colin Holback, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. When we come back, we're going to be talking about a River Changes course. So all that is coming up in just a moment.